Welcome to An Extraordinary Life. I'm your host, Danielle Desiree, and today you are in for a special treat today. My guest today, Sarah Hirter, is my son Jordan's mother of the best friend. So my son's best friend's mother. So without further ado, hello, Sarah. How are you doing today?
Hello, Danielle. Good. How are you?
Good. I am doing great. First and foremost, thank you for joining us today.
Of course.
It's a pleasure. I've known Jackson now it's what, been about over a year, would you say?
Probably at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good year that they've been really close friends, I would say.
Yeah. And my son has had many friends, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. But he came home and one day he was just going on and on about your son.
Oh.
And he felt like he met the person that was his friend that truly got him. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've ever come across him talk about anybody the way he's talked about your son.
Aww.
And it's been a pleasure to be a part of Jackson's life and to see how wonderful he is with his quirky, original, wonderful self. I just love him. He's a light everywhere he goes.
Oh, thank you.
So I just wanted you today, if it was okay, to give us a little feedback about what life was like when Jackson first got, what Jackson's diagnosed with.
Okay.
And what life was like for you and your family once you heard the diagnosis.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. And we feel the same about Jordan. And he's been a pleasure to get to know. We love having him over and around our family. So Jackson, a little bit background on him. He, at 6 months of age, we started noticing he was having seizures. And he would have seizures after every time he would wake up. So as you can imagine, as a baby, they sleep a lot, nap, and they're waking up, and he would have seizures. And we quickly got it diagnosed, and he started on medication. And at the time, my husband was working with neurosurgeons and neurologists, and they told us to make sure and watch his development. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, my daughter is 20 months older than Jackson, so I had something I could compare it to, his development to. And we pretty much, within about its first year of life, we could see there were some developmental delays. He wasn't doing the normal batting at toys, trying to, touch things when he was laying on his back. And he wasn't, even after he was a year, he wasn't making any making any noises, trying to say mama, dada, nothing like that. So we knew that there were some things we needed to watch. So at about a year and a half, I talked to the pediatrician and I told him our concerns. And very quickly, he got us right up to Tampa, and we got into the Early Steps program. So that was, we caught it really early with him, and he did get a diagnosis then of PDD-NOS. Back then, 17 years ago, they used that pervasive developmental disorder. Because he didn't quite fit all the criteria, I guess, for autism spectrum. So they put him with the PDD-NOS. But, they treated it basically the same thing with the early intervention. Okay. And we're so thankful that, in a way, the seizures kind of helped catch, I think, the autism also. And so he started getting very intensive therapy before he was even 2. And then the road just kind of went from there. We had him in a special program that he was in school where they did ABA therapy all day long from 8 to 2 or 8 to 3, 5 days a week. And he had occupational therapy 5 days a week. He had speech therapy 5 days a week. But, Jackson didn't speak until he was 4. Mm-hmm. He didn't say any words. And then his first word, of course, was no. Of course. And everything was no. So from there, but we from early on, we had neurologists, because of the epilepsy, we had neurologists that would tell us, don't get your hopes up. He's never going to talk. And then when he started talking, well, he's never going to read. I mean, we've heard it all. And Jackson is now, I can say, at 17, he's going to be graduating with a regular diploma next year, not too soon.
Right.
And, he's doing really well. The road to get here has been, up and down, just like for most kids. Okay. But with Jackson, we have definitely learned that you let him set the pace. Mm-hmm. You be firm and push him, but don't push him too hard. He's going to get there when it's his time. But yeah, so when he was little, we just did a lot of intensive therapy. So as he grew up, he did get a diagnosis of ADHD. Mm-hmm. And that was when he was in first grade. And then about 2 years after that, he got a diagnosis of anxiety and OCD. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of his 4 main diagnoses at this point. Okay. So yeah, it's been a journey.
It always is, and ongoing at that.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're gonna switch to a different topic a little bit, but during this time, how was it for your family? How I guess I could say, how was it an adjustment for you, for your husband Jeff, for your daughter? Mm-hmm. I guess throughout the journey, how do you feel they've adjusted, or how do you feel it was for them?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, because I think that this is what's hard for a lot of families is the acceptance. I think you go through different periods, and I think mothers go through different stages than fathers do, and at different rates. For me, I used to be a teacher, and I remember the year that I was pregnant with my daughter, I had all of the speech and language students from second grade in my class. They were my kiddos. And I remember thinking, gosh, these kiddos are so cool. It's so great to see their progress. And then to find out that I had a child, had a child that had some special needs. And so I definitely, it was easier for me to embrace it and to accept the diagnosis than it was my husband. He went through a much longer denial stage than I did, and it was more difficult. I think when he found out we were having a boy, he was so excited. Oh, I'm going to have, a little son to play baseball, because he was a baseball player.
Right.
And to see those dreams that he had, in reality, he knew that they weren't going to become reality. That was really difficult for him. So it was much easier for me. Plus, I was in it every single day with Jackson. I would go to all of his therapies with him. And then I was with him when he wasn't at school. I was his main caregiver, whereas his father, worked all long hours. So he wasn't with him every single day, all day long like I was. So for me, that was another reason I think it was easier to accept and to move forward quicker than it was for my husband. As for my daughter, I will say it has been really wonderful and very difficult at the same time. Difficult. First, I'll talk about the difficult part, because I think, when you have siblings, especially when they're so close in age, you think, oh, it's going to be great. They're going to grow up. They're going to be, sure, they're going to, fight and argue at times, but they're going to play with each other. Only being less than 2 years apart, they're going to have a buddy, Yeah. It was not like that at all. They never played with each other. Jackson didn't want anything to do with Haley. He was in his own world. I don't even know that he knew Haley was, there, or cared that she was there and around. So that was really difficult. And I know it was hard for Haley too. So I basically had two only children.
Yeah.
And so it was hard. And it was hard for me to see that happening. But on the other hand, I think Haley being raised with her brother and around other kids that had special needs, she is so compassionate and so patient and understanding. And even now at 19, I notice her seeking out the ones that maybe are sitting by themselves, or you can tell just are, maybe a little uncomfortable, and she will go and talk to them, try to make them feel more comfortable, try to accept them and bring them in. And so as a mom, I love seeing that. And I know that partly is her personality, but I think also because she's grown up with it in her life.
Yeah.
When she was younger, they would use Haley as a role model, and she would be a peer role model for other students at the school. And she loved it, of course. She, got to play with all these kids, and they treated her like a superstar. And she was so good with them. She didn't know that she was helping them while she was just having fun and playing with the kids. Oh. So, I think it's also shaped her and kind of in maybe the area of like a career that she would like to go into, because she's always said, I want to work with kids that have special needs in some capacity. At first it was occupational therapy. Now it's more of psychology route, maybe. Mm-hmm. She's still not sure. She's only 19, but so it's been wonderful for that in that aspect, but there were difficult times too.
Oh yeah, I know. And with Jordan and CJ, so they're 9-year difference.
Okay.
So it's a big difference. So they didn't, grow up real close.
Right.
They're just now kind of coming together a bit more and having some of the same interests in certain things. Mm-hmm. And then they're the same sex. So with 2 boys, I'm not going to say my oldest isn't compassionate to him at times, because he is, but they're brothers. And I don't think, and then I have a younger sibling, but we're opposite sex too. Mm-hmm. So it was different dynamic too. But when it's the same sex, I think the dynamic's a little different. So
I'm sure.
And it's funny because he'll give his brother a hard time, but let somebody give his brother a hard time. Mm-hmm. That's when the protectiveness comes in, and but I love that though. Yeah. And Haley's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah.
When we're going to shift gears again.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about school.
Okay.
What was his journey? I know a lot of times with special needs kids, school is hard, especially in public schools. Mm-hmm. The children aren't getting what they need. Mm-hmm. You feel like you have to fight and constantly advocate for your child to have what they need. Mm-hmm. And it gets to be taxing. It gets to be draining. And you're just trying to do your best to make sure whatever supports they need are there. Mm-hmm. So what was that like for you when he was younger?
Mm-hmm. So when Jackson, from the age of 2 through 5, he was at a special needs school. So I was able to kind of breathe and relax a little bit, knowing that he was getting what he needed at that school, because it was a very small environment. I think the classes they maxed out at 8 with 2 teachers. But then I knew I wanted to get him into mainstream public school. Mm-hmm. And I wanted him mainstream into a regular classroom. I knew he could do it. I knew it was going to be difficult. So I pushed, and I did get him an aide for Jackson from kindergarten through 5th grade. He had a one-on-one aide. I fought for it every year for it to stay in place, but it was the best thing, because what that allowed him to do was it allowed him to be with neurotypical students. So he was learning and modeling neurotypical behavior, good and bad. He was at least seeing that, being around that all day long. When the aide would notice that Jackson wasn't quite getting the information, she could then take him, remove him from the classroom, take him to a quiet area, and reteach what the lesson was, so that Jackson was able to get it. Maybe at a slower rate, maybe teach it a different way. Yeah. But that's what that aid allowed, Jackson to be in the mainstream classroom, but still be getting that one-on-one that he's desperately needed. And that was kind of how it looked through 5th grade. And then we moved counties. And from 6th to 8th grade, he didn't have a one-on-one aide. And you could tell it was definitely more of a struggle for Jackson. But in this time, we noticed it was more of a struggle socially. When the aide was there, she was able to facilitate and help with that social interaction between Jackson and his peers. Once we didn't have that aide, it was definitely more difficult. And that was when I think some of the bullying came into play. But I will tell you that I think because we had that aide and she was able to help Jackson advocate for himself, when he was getting some bullying happening, Jackson stood up for himself. And Jackson has no problem going and telling an adult what's going on. So luckily, we didn't really have too many issues there. But then we entered going into high school, which scared me.
Oh, yeah.
That's what kept me up at night, every night. But we were fortunate enough to find a private school that it's a small environment. He works at his own pace, and he's with other kids that get him. And I think that has been the biggest blessing that has come from us switching counties, is that he is now with other students that are more like-minded as Jackson, and such as Jordan. He now has his first and best friend. They act like brothers half the time.
Yes, they do.
But they get each other. And I remember when Jackson went to this school for a camp in the summertime before he was to enter 9th grade. Mm-hmm. And he went to the camp, and it was like a 6-week or 9-week camp. And at the end of that, he said, "Mom, I want to go to this school for high school." And I asked him why, because we were already enrolled in the public school, the high school, the local one. And he said, "Because these kids get me. They understand me, and they accept me." And I said, "Okay, then that's the school you're going to."
Right.
And it's been, nothing's absolutely perfect, but it has been a really good place for Jackson. He has definitely matured and come into more of his own there. And then for me, the best thing is he has friends.
Oh, yeah.
And he has good friends, and friends that they stand up for each other. Now, they give each other a lot of, they definitely do some
criticize
of this.
At times. Yes, they do.
But they are there for each other. It's true friendship. I couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah, I love that. Well, he calls y'all second family.
Well,
and I'm all for it.
And we call him. I tell him, you're my other son.
Right. But I'm going to touch on something that you just said. You just said that they accept him, and I think that's the key to, with neurodiverse, not just children but people as a whole. It's just accepting them for who they are.
Absolutely.
I think we live in a society right now that still wants to change them or still wants them to adjust to what society is, when really it's just, we just need to accept them. This is who they are. This is how the world works for them. This is how they perceive the world and how they see it. And it's so funny because we're constantly learning from our kiddos. There's times where I have conversations with Jordan, and he helps me to see something in a totally different way than I would have seen it.
Right.
And
absolutely.
It's just been so good for him to see what that's like with people that accept him, that get him, that, don't try to change him. We're going to talk about you for a moment, if that's okay.
Okay.
So I know you're the mom. A lot of times the moms have it the hardest in some ways. For you going through this journey with Jackson throughout when he was young and dealing with the seizures up until now and high school stuff, how's it been for you as far as you being able to I guess, do self-care for yourself, as far as whatever self-care looks like for you? Is it okay for you to tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah. I think at the beginning, well, I will say I had an amazing supportive team. And I say team because my mother-in-law and father-in-law were amazing. And they stepped in right away when Jackson was getting all of his diagnosis at the beginning and we were trying to figure things out. They would come and stay with Haley so that I could go with Jackson to all of his therapy. And my mother-in-law actually quit her full-time job and came to be able to be there whenever I needed for Haley. And that was amazing. I could never have done it without her and without my father-in-law. But I remember when Jackson first started at the school he was at when he was really young, and we would have parent trainings once a month. And I remember one of the first ones, they talked about how it's so important that we take care of ourselves. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be here to take care of our children. But the other thing is that we need to take care and value our relationship with our spouse also. And I remember taking that information home to my in-laws because I knew I was going to need their help. And again, I stepped right up and made sure that I was getting what I needed, which at that time looked like a lot of running, a lot of miles on my feet. I was a runner. So for me, I would run a lot. I said, well, I'm kind of running away from my problems, but that's okay. Yeah. I always come back. It helps.
That's right.
So for me, it was a lot of running, a lot of half marathons, a lot of training for those. But it allowed me time, which back then, that's what that looked like. It has changed since then. I do not run anymore. But the other thing was date nights, weekends away. And at least once a month, they made sure, they being my in-laws, they made sure that my husband and I was able to at least get out for a date night, get away, do something. So important. Because without those sort of things, I don't know. It's hard, I think, hard for marriages to last through all this, the stress of it, the financial strain, so many different pieces. But I think over the years, I've been pretty good at, when Jackson's doing his thing, I've been fortunate enough that I have been able to continue being a stay-at-home mom. The plan was for me to go back into education and teach, but we quickly realized that the best thing for me was to be able to be there for Jackson at the drop of a hat, especially with the seizures, because we never knew. Thankfully, Jackson's seizures were never, he didn't have grand mal seizures. So we didn't have to worry about that. But there were times when I would get phone calls from the, school saying, he's tired. We think he had a couple seizures this morning and he's really tired. And I would have to go pick him up. So I'm very thankful that I was able to be that parent that could go and do that. But when he was at school, I did try to make sure that I was getting me time. And, that could be looking like a walk on the beach, reading a book, taking a nap. As we know, I love taking my naps.
Which we just talked about before we got on here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But making sure that you take time for yourself, so important. And then again, for my husband and I, making sure that we were able to get out and do something, the two of us. Another thing that I struggled with, I think, from the beginning was making sure that Haley got time. Because it was all about Jackson.
Yeah,
it had to be. Yep. It had to be all about Jackson. And the other sibling is always going to be a little bit left out or kind of, on the back burner a little bit, for lack of better terms. So we tried really hard to make sure that we included her as much as we could without Jackson at times too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real good.
Things that were just with the three of us, or Mommy Haley days where we would go and do things. So I think that was really important too.
Right. And I can see that. And, it's great that you had your in-laws. For people that don't have that, any help you can get.
Any help.
If you can't get it from your family, get it from friends. If you can't get it from friends, see if there's some services out there.
I was just going to say, reach out to see, because there's always respite.
Yeah.
You can get respite. And we use that some too. My mother-in-law passed away. It was nine years ago now. So when Jackson was about 8, 8 or 9. So when that happened, then we looked to respite. Mm-hmm. And we would have respite come in and stay with the kids so that Jeff and I could get out for, a couple of hours. So yeah, you've got to find ways. I think another thing also is through this whole journey, I have met so many wonderful other parents and a lot of moms that I've become close with. Time away with them was important and has been important because, again, we get each other.
Right.
We have that in common.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things in our lives, and we have something that somebody else understands and can sympathize with us. And, when we're having issues, we can go and bounce off ideas off of them. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of wonderful moms over the years that have been in my life that are my friends that understand. We understand each other. We get, some days are really hard.
Right.
And then we celebrate the wins.
That's right.
So.
That's right. And it's been great for me because I'm just now seeing how valuable that was. Mm-hmm. When Jordan was younger, I didn't have that. Mm-hmm. I had friends, but they didn't know what I was going through because their day-to-day looked different.
Sure.
So there were a lot of times I felt isolated. I felt alone. So, you're right. It is really important for them to talk to other moms or talk to other dads if you're a dad, if you're a single dad.
Yeah.
Whatever your situation is, if you're a grandparent, I think it makes a world of difference. And like you said, bouncing ideas off of, or my kiddo's doing this. What is yours doing?
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's human nature to compare to and see, okay, what are you doing? We're having this issue. What are you doing? If you're having the same issue, how are you handling it? And I think it's really important.
Absolutely. What are your hopes for Jackson for the future? What does that look like for you?
Oh, gosh. Now, this is what keeps me up at night now.
Okay.
There's been different stages,
Right. Well, I can relate.
Yep. Because it's scary, when they're little, early intervention, there's so much available, so many resources available. And when you're in that, you don't realize, oh gosh, in, 12 years, 15 years, whatever, we're now going to be out of that system. What's going to be available? And so that's kind of where we are. And, my goals for Jackson would be that he would live independently nearby, have a job, and just be happy. I just want him happy.
Yeah.
Quality of life is what we've always said with Jackson. That's, we try to have the best quality of life for him. I do believe that with some little push, guidance, Jackson will have a job. And
yes.
I do think he will eventually be able to be more independent and perhaps live with a roommate and live on his own that way. But it's a little scary right now because, we're coming up to where we're graduating. And what is that next step? He's just now starting to talk to me and starting to accept that he's going to have to get a job because he does not want to have to get a job.
No, of course not.
No.
They don't want things to change.
No.
Right.
Change is bad.
Yeah.
Change is bad. And thinking about college. Before, even a year ago, when I would talk to him about college, he would shut down. He didn't want to talk about college. I think because he didn't know what that looked like, partly, but also it's change. It's something different. And, so right now we're trying to talk about what his options will be and see if we can come up with some different career options that he might be interested in. But this is a whole new another journey for us.
Oh, yeah. It begins a new
Another
journey.
chapter.
Yes. Yes.
One that's scary for Mom.
Yes.
But we will do it. And I'm thankful he's going to have a buddy that I think will be right there with him, probably doing it. So that'll make it a little easier.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It's interesting because I feel the same way. And there's so much in society that helps support, like you said, when they're younger.
Right.
But it's like they cross this threshold. Mm-hmm. And once they're older, it's like no one's really.
Yeah.
Yeah. We go and we're like, okay, well, what do we do? How do we do this? What,
Right.
And
it's like they didn't expect these kids to grow up.
Yeah.
And I know that our kids, at the ages that they're at, they're on the beginning side, if you will, of this whole epidemic, or large population of children or individuals being diagnosed with autism. So I understand that maybe the services are, need to grow and we need to get more, but we need to do it, and we need to do it quickly, because there's going to be a lot of these young individuals coming into adulthood real soon. And what are we going to do with them? Where are we going to place them for jobs?
Right. And I think that society needs to place an emphasis on doing it differently. Mm-hmm. What worked for us, what worked for our parents, it may not work for this population of children, and they have a different way of doing things. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing that one of the best things to do is look at whatever their interests are, because when they're interested in something, they are interested in something.
Yes. Right. Right. Absolutely.
So I think that's where I am with Jordan too. Like, okay, well, these are your interests. These are the things that you're good at because you're interested in them.
Right.
So you want to do them all the time.
Right.
How can we take what you're interested in and you do it, but you're earning a living from it?
Right.
So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, we have these kind of conversations about that. And, like you, it still has me worried a little bit, especially with laws and everything else.
Right.
I know when they get to be a certain age as the moms, no, we're not going to have to say so unless there's something in place on decision making.
Right.
They're going to be able to make their decisions for themselves.
Yes.
So that's something new that I'm looking into too.
Yes. We just started talking to an attorney about that, because when Jackson turns 18, all of a sudden, we even for medical, for HIPAA. And then I know Jackson, he's very gullible and naive and trusting to everybody. And so we're looking at, okay, how do we keep him safe? How do we keep, when he does get a job and he does start earning money, how do we keep that money safe?
Right.
So that somebody doesn't just come and ask him for all of his money and he says, sure.
Right. It gives it to him.
Oh, you're going to give me a video game? I'll give you all my money.
Right.
So those things, that trying to get some things in place to where we're safeguarding him the best we can. But again, this is all, there's not really somebody helping us.
Right.
When they were younger, there was always training. There was always somebody kind of there guiding us.
Yeah.
That's not the case right now. So we're having to, I think, again, this is where we as parents have to help each other out.
Yes, definitely.
When we find out information, pass that information on.
Absolutely.
So that, we're not all sitting out there floundering.
Around. Right.
Right.
And I think that that's helpful. You're right. That's definitely been helpful to me. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And then for the other moms that we do talk to as well. So moving forward. Okay. So I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
Which is, if you could look back and where you are today, the whole journey, parenting Jackson, the things that you've been through, everything. If you could only say one thing to parents in this situation,
oh gosh,
what would it be to help them?
Only one?
Well, for you, maybe we'll say two, since it's you.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. I think, kind of looking back, seeing what has been the most helpful, I guess, if you will, along the journey, has been making sure that follow through. And when he was younger and we did hours of therapy, taking that home, and anybody that came in contact with Jackson, I made sure that they understood how to handle things. When it came down to him asking for something, we all had to make sure it looked the same as what the therapist taught us to do for Jackson. So that's what I mean from the follow through.
Okay.
You know, taking what the therapists were doing or what they were doing at school and then taking it to the home also. I think that was really important for Jackson because otherwise I think he would have been confused. You know, well, I do it this way at school, but then at home we do something different. So I think that was huge, was the follow through. And something that I think looking back that I wish I would have done a little differently is not done everything for Jackson.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Because now here we are.
Yeah.
He's almost 18. And my husband will look at me and say, really, Sarah? Why are you doing that for him? He's very capable. But the mom in us, right? We want to do it for our children. And for my daughter, that's fine because she can do it on her own. But for Jackson, he has to learn how to do it. We've had to teach him everything. So the more I do it for him, it gives him less opportunity to learn how to do it himself. He's capable, so I need to step back and stop doing everything for him and make him do it. Sure, he's going to pitch a fit. He doesn't want to make his own chicken nuggets.
Right.
But if my goal and his goal is to live on his own one day, he has to learn how to make those chicken nuggets. And I need to start now. I should have started years ago. So I think that's something that I wish I would have, stopped being that mom, that mother hen, doing everything for my children and made him do some of those things earlier on.
Right. Well, I can totally relate. You're talking to me. So yes. And I'm in the process now of doing the same thing because I was the same way.
I know.
So,
it's hard.
Yeah. But I realized the same thing. Like, okay, that saying where they say you can teach someone to, you can give someone a fish and feed them for a day, or you can teach them
how to fish
and feed them for a lifetime.
Yep.
Yeah, the same thing.
So true.
We're right there.
So true.
Right.
So true.
Well, thank you again so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And to everyone out there, thank you today for watching. We hope that you got some value out of this and this is helpful. Please share, like, comment, subscribe. And until the next time, love you guys.